Hey, I'm John Hazel, automation expert and business strategist.
And I'm Kevin Miller, software lead and seasoned podcaster.
And this is the Automate and Elevate podcast where we help you build systems, create leverage, and scale your business.
So, on today's episode, we want to talk about the importance of execution. Without executing, you're never going to get anything done, and your ideas are just going to remain a fantasy. So, we're going to show you how to bring those ideas to life. John, you have this slide that you're going to show, and you're going to explain the four disciplines of execution. So, yeah, give us a little bit of an introduction on what you're going to show us today.
Yeah, the four disciplines of execution, you can find the same thing if you just go on Google Images and just type four disciplines of execution. It comes from a book by Chris McChesney, Jim Hewling, and Sean Covey. And it's just a simple, I've talked before about how important it is for me to distill things down to the atomic level, to get things down to the first principles, to the fundamental frameworks. I'm just saying that three different ways just to make sure it's clear, but like it's distilling things down as simple as possible, what's at the core, and building from there, because the actual implementation tends to look different for everybody. But if you can distill things down to the clear, like these are the four things you need to do, then it's applicable and valuable to everybody. So four disciplines of execution to me is, first of all, I first experienced this in a sales role. Like the first time I really truly, this was like happening to the nth degree. I was in cold call sales at a great organization and had an amazing manager. And we would do this like every week, every day, really. We had clear focus on wildly important goals. We had set lead measures, our controllables for the day. We had clear, compelling scorecards for both our lead measures, our controllables, and our lag measures, like our KPIs. And then we had accountability. Every morning we had a huddle. Every week we had a review of the week. We had clear accountability to make sure that we were getting the things done that we said. So these are the four disciplines of execution. Focus on wildly important goals, know what they are, be focused on them. Two is act on lead measures, your controllables. Three is keep compelling scorecards. Four is create accountability. That can be through frequent meetings. That can be through, check-ins, daily check-ins, like reports or whatever. There's several ways to do it, but make sure there's accountability. Everybody knows who's responsible for what and when it's supposed to be done, and there's clarity, right?
Right. So, like, what about this particular framework resonates with you over others? And let's just say somebody is just freestyling. How will like doing something like this improve what they're doing, like without the framework?
Yeah, so let's hone in on this first. We're gonna break down each step, but first is your wildly important goal, right? So this model isn't necessarily the thing you're using for your day to day, just getting things done. This is for like achieving the next level in your business. It's for getting a product launch. It's for some campaign that you're pushing, right? So it's like let's pick a specific wildly important goal, identify that thing, right? Now for this, if you haven't already, I recommend the book Vivid Vision for like digging into the vision you have for your company or your area of the business and like getting really vivid about what you want to see. Um, I've just seen the power of vision over the years to where it's undeniable. Um, I've there's been times where I've written things down and said I want in this year to accomplish this, and it sounded ridiculous and impossible, and I had no idea how I was going to do it. And I just wrote it down and I put it to the side, and I didn't even like create an actionable steps, and it happened. Like it was a wild goals that made no sense to where how I like that it would be possible for me to get there. And yet like because I wrote it down, because I gave it that attention, the opportunities just opened their own way to me. So this is kind of like just the law of attention. When you're giving something attention, it attracts to you, or the law of attraction, whatever you want to call it. But so my point is, like, spend some time on vision and on goals on where you want to go. I love GTD, David Allen's Horizons of Focus. So I'll just talk about the top levels, but basically you have your purpose. What's your core purpose as a business? And then you have your vision. What's the picture of where you're going? And then you have your goals, your SMART, SMART, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound goals that are actually going to get you to that vision, right? Now, on the bottom three of that is the actual execution of that. What are your areas of focus, projects, and next actions? So those are the horizons of focus from David Allen, which I highly recommend for clarifying, like, because goals, if you notice, was like kind of right in the middle of that. If you don't know your purpose, you don't know your vision, it's kind of hard to get specific goals, right? So focus on a wildly important goal, figure out what that thing is. And one more thing on that, in another episode, I talk about Donald Miller's airplane model and how the leadership is the cockpit, right? And so this is one of those leadership activities on, like, deciding what's the wildly important goal. This has to happen in the cockpit to make sure the airplane is going in the right direction. The second thing is act on lead measures. Lead measures are activities influenced by the team's actions that drive the success of the WIG, the wildly important goal. So you got to define, what are my lead measures? These are my controllables. I say, like, every day I'm going to blank, or every week I'm going to blank, every Monday. So this might be like, I need to add 10 people as prospects into campaigns that I'm going to run, like sales campaigns, right? Or sequences. This could be, in this case, like the podcast, the lead measure is, are we recording every week, right? We have to make sure that we're recording, or we're not going to have anything to publish, right? That's a super straightforward one, okay? And then set those actions and have regular check-ins. Like, I know you're going to text me if it's been a few weeks and you haven't heard from me, and it's like, hey, are we doing this podcast or what? Right? So act on those lead measures. The third thing is keep compelling scorecards. Create meaningful, big, visible, continually updated scoreboards, which tell whether the team is on target or not, as key to personal and team engagement towards the wildly important goals. Okay. So the scoreboard should be clear on, are we hitting our controllables? And then really you can do this all on one scoreboard, or have two separate scoreboards, but whatever. The point is that you have all your lead measures in a scoreboard and your lag measures, right? So the lead measure, for a podcast is, are we recording? Are we clipping it? How many clips are we posting? Those kinds of things. The lag measures are, how many views are we getting? How many followers? How many subscribers? And so if we set those lag measures, those KPIs, key performance indicators, and we're not hitting those things, we need to say, how do we need to change the input, the controllables? Are we focusing on the right topics? Do we need to improve the quality of the podcast? So I need to buy a podcast mic. And yes, I know I need to buy a podcast mic, and I'll get around to it. It's like, what are the things that we need to do to improve those lag measures, right? But it's the lead measures that drive the growth, okay? And so compelling scorecards. And then fourth is create accountability. So we have to know who's responsible for what and when it's going to get done by. We have to know, if we know what our lead measures are, what our controllables are, but we don't have any review where we're going to feel the peer pressure of, my team is going to see that, oh, I was supposed to send out 100 emails to new prospects over the last 2 weeks, or the last week, or whatever, and I've only sent out 30, then I know I'm going to get asked about that, right? So we got to have that accountability. We have to commit and say, I commit to do this. We review the wildly important goal, and we have regular reporting and meetings to review that, right? And that accountability is what gets us there. And I promise you, if you're doing all four of these things, you will see the growth. It's just a matter of time, right?
So this particular framework, when we bring it back to the previous framework, the airplane model. This is more so on the leadership end. Is that correct?
This is on the execution side. So I'll just switch to that. So since we're talking about it, but basically on the airplane model, it's like, these are all the things that you need to have your attention on. These are your areas of focus, calling back to the GTD horizons of focus. I'll try and pull up that model as well to make a little more sense. But basically, these are the things you need to have your attention on. And now, as far as actually executing the goals of where you're trying to go. So like this 4 disciplines of execution applies to every area of this airplane. In leadership, like we set specific goals. Maybe it's team development. Maybe it's like, this is essentially, what are the things internally for our company and for the growth of our company? What are those wildly important goals? In marketing, we have a wildly important goal of like, we want to reach 1 million views across all of our socials this year, right? In product, maybe it's like, we want to add 100 new features in this quarter that people have been asking for. And, so each of these things can have their own wildly important goals, and then lead measures that are set, lag measures, scorecards, and accountability. So this applies to every area of the business. Now back to that, I mentioned the horizons of focus as well. So this is what that looks like. You got your purpose and your guiding principles, also called core values. And then you have your vision of where the company is going. Then you have your goals of how you're going to get there. What are the specific things we need to achieve? And then you have your areas of focus. These are the roles, the things that you need to focus on in order to achieve those goals. So at the highest level of the business, those areas of focus are the 6 that I just talked about in that airplane model: leadership, marketing, sales, products or services, overhead, and cash flow. Those are your 6 as a CEO. Those are your 6 primary areas of focus. Now, depending on what industry and business you're in, you're going to have different areas of focus, right? And then you have the specific projects that lead to those goals actually happening, the specific projects that fall under the different areas that you need to focus on. And then you have your calendar, the actual, this time slot is, this is happening, and your next actions. And we'll do another podcast episode that's just dedicated to this, because there's a lot here. But the bottom line is, like, a lot of times we have a bunch of projects sitting on our to-do list, and we avoid them because we're not really sure what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is clarify, what are the next actions that lead me to accomplishing that project, right? And then when the projects get done, then the goals get met. When the goals get met, the vision gets achieved, and we accomplish our purpose as a business. Make sense?
Right. So, a lot of times when people are just getting started with business, they're solopreneurs. It's just one person. So, there's a lot of information here. So, like, what should they be focused on? Like, if they only have limited capacity, how do they choose between all of these to start off with? And, what is the most important, like as a solopreneur?
Yeah. This is going to be an unsatisfactory answer, but it depends. It depends on your business. For me, I had word of mouth networking to build my business and going to networking meetings. And I had the luxury of time because, like, it started out as a side business and slowly grew into my full-time gig. But what would happen is, like, I'd have really good business for a little bit, and then the word of mouth networking would dry up, and then I don't have anybody, right? So I finally hit a point where I was like, I have to be super intentional each week about my sales and my marketing. And both, like, sales is a more short-term turnaround, usually, hopefully, but really with both, it's usually like a 6 to 12 month turnaround. It just takes time to build that pipeline. And then what often happens is, like, we get a pipeline built, we get all these projects, and then all of a sudden we stop giving attention to sales and marketing because we're focused on fulfilling the services or the products. and then it dries up again. And so you can do this like back and forth thing, or you can decide like every month I am going to give attention to all of these things, right? At a bare minimum. If it's a side business, you can get away with every month. At some point, you're going to need to give attention to all of these every single week. And I've seen different ones of these break businesses. Like if you're not on top of all 6 of these long term, the business will die. If you're not focused on your overhead and thinking about how do I reduce that and stay lean and efficient, then you get too big for the amount of fuel you have, the engines you have, and you crash. So it's really, you have to balance between all 6. And I know that's like managing attention, but you gotta make the time for it. And some days different things are on fire, and those are the things that demand your attention. This kind of goes back to the old Eisenhower matrix, where you have important and urgent. So you've got this is important and urgent. Those are the things you know you're going to address. Those are the fires that are like, I have to deal with this right away, right? Then you have your urgent but not important. And those are the things those are traps where we get caught firefighting all these urgent things that are not actually moving the needle on our business, that are not actually growing the business. And so those are the things we need to delegate as much as possible, or say like, why are we continually running into this urgent thing, right? Like, let's say you're in an events business, you're always going to have, an event is 3 months from now, and yet it's like the week before the event, and you're just now sending to the printers the things that you need. And you know that now you got to pay a rush fee, and now you're having extra cash flow fuel burn that you don't need to have because of poor planning. So if things are urgent but not important, it's usually because of poor planning, or maybe it's because of a bad client, or there's like all kinds of different reasons that can happen. But you need to figure out how to delegate those and reduce and remove those, right? The urgent, not important. And then you have your not urgent, not important. And these are also traps where it's like you could spend too much time like researching. For me, a trap can be hacker news, which comes from it was created by Y Combinator, but people will like post all kinds of posts on there and articles and things. And it's like, I can feel like, oh, I need to stay up to date on everything that's happening in the tech space. And I could just like get caught up in this thing. And it's like, no, I need to have a decent pulse, but I can't keep up with everything. Like, we're in the information age with abundance of information coming at us, and I need curated information coming at me. And sometimes when I'm in my downtime, I can do that, but not urgent, not important, we got to throw it away. And then you have your important but not urgent. And this is the most important category, because the urgent and important things you're probably going to address naturally, but the important but not urgent, those are the things that you have to set aside time in the early morning or the late night when no one's around. Or if you have the ability to be completely undistracted in the middle of the day, blessings on you, because I don't have that. But if you have to have undistracted time to focus on the things that you know are important, but nobody's pushing you to get them done, right? And so anyway, I know that's a lot. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. So like it starting from the top, forming a vision. What is the best way for someone to craft a coherent vision, and then eventually start breaking that down into smaller chunks?
Yeah, exactly. So I've gone about this several different ways. This is why I love the Horizons of Focus model from David Allen, because to me, it's comprehensive when it comes to actually like getting things done, and all the way up to the why of why we're doing these things. So sometimes I look at what's on my calendar, and I look at my calendar, or I take a screenshot of my calendar and drop it in Claude or another chat bot and say, like, based on this, what do you think my priorities are? Right? Like, look at it and say, like, what are the things I'm prioritizing? And maybe that means you have to like look back at your last week and write in the different things you did, but just look at the things you're already doing and say, based on this, what are my priorities? And then does that align with how I really feel? And if it doesn't, then there's a cognitive dissonance. There's a disconnect between what I truly want and what I'm actually doing, right? So then you have to look at, okay, which area of these is not clear then? Do I have a clear vision, but I messed up on the projects that are supposed to get me to the goals that I've set. I have a clear vision, the correct goals. I might think these are the right goals that are going to get me to that vision, but maybe the projects aren't actually serving those goals as well as I thought. Or maybe I'm just firefighting every day and I need to step back and say, what's my vision? What are my goals? What are the projects? What are the next actions I need to do? And create a next actions list and say, I'm going to have at least a 2-hour block each day where I'm just executing, right? The other thing is that like we undervalue the importance of reflection. If when you're following the GTD system, you're following these horizons of focus, like if you have that weekly review, it feels like wasted time because it's not revenue producing time, but it makes the rest of your week 1,000 times more efficient because you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. And if you've sectioned things out based on your context, like David Allen recommends these, you have your next actions list, and then maybe you have a list for calls. These are phone calls I can make while I'm driving. Maybe you have a context list for driving that's like phone calls, things that I need to listen to, podcasts that I've decided I'm going to listen to, right? And so then depending on your context, you know exactly, okay, here's the things that I can do within this context. And you're not having to rack your brain to think about what can I actually do to be productive right now. So the planning and the strategy then makes you far more productive than if you just react to the next thing that's happening.
Yeah, I think this is a fantastic stopping point. So just to summarize and just to give our audience something to think about before we do another episode and meet them next time. What did you want to leave them with?
Yeah, I know I covered a lot today. We talked about the horizons of focus. We talked about the airplane model, and we started with the 4 disciplines of execution. So we'll end with the 4 disciplines of execution. What are those wildly important goals that your business needs to be focused on? Have you clarified those lead measures? Have you created scorecards that are meaningful, that are compelling? And have you created the right accountability rhythms to make sure that execution is happening? And if you're a solopreneur, you have to do this just as much for yourself as you do with a team. And maybe that accountability is a mentor that you're going to, or a group of fellow entrepreneurs, but you still got to find a way to make these 4 things happen no matter where you are in business.
Awesome, man. If they wanted to work with you or get more clarity on any of these concepts, where's the best place to reach you at?
Yeah, I would love to connect. My name again is John Hazel. You can email me at john@johnhazel.com. You can go to my website, johnhazel.com, to learn more about me and my businesses. And you can go on LinkedIn. That's kind of my favorite social platform. You can send me a DM on LinkedIn or any social platform. I'd love to connect with you. And if this podcast impacted you, it would mean a lot to find out about it. So please let me know.
Awesome, man. We'd like to thank everybody for tuning in once again. We'll catch y'all next time.